I am a very big fan of Brandon Sanderson. I have been reading the Cosmere since 2010, 2009, something like that. And I think I might have just read two of the best books written in that universe. Let's talk about them. Over the past 9 days, I read Wind and Truth, which is almost 1,400 pages, and The Sunlit Man. I had no intention of reading The Sunlit Man anytime soon, but when I finished Wind and Truth, I was just all the way back into the Cosmere. I needed it in my life. I read a John D. MacDonald book, as I am known to do, weekly, and then I couldn't decide what to read next. I just got out The Sunlit Man. I'm going to do 2 spoiler-free reviews for these real quick. I absolutely loved Wind and Truth. I think that the beginning is like the weakest beginning of a Stormlight book, but as soon as like day 1 is finished, it's absolutely amazing. Everything about it. The pacing is perfect, other than the sluggish beginning. For any of you that don't know, which I don't know why you're watching this, but I'll explain it anyways. Wind and Truth takes place over 10 days. So at the end of the previous book, there was a deal struck where in 10 days, there was going to be a contest of champions and it would decide the fate of Roshar. I think one of the things that makes this such a well-paced book is that it only takes place over 10 days. I know some people have complaints about how long-winded Sanderson books are, which they are. This book is like 66 hours or something on audio, and it's almost 1,400 pages. But here's the thing. It reads so easy. It's been a long time since I've read a book that big, and I read it so fast. I did half of it on audio and half of it on Kindle. At one point, I was so sucked into the book, I took it with me on a walk. I was just reading my Kindle and walking my block. I walked 3.5 miles while reading that thing. I was burning it up. The only reason I stopped was because my hip hurt and I had to go pick up my kid from school. I was just so enthralled by Wind and Truth. Some highlights without spoilers. My boy Adolin got some attention in this book. He's one of my favorite characters in the entire Cosmere. Brought me nothing but joy to see him again. Honestly, I would have been so upset if Adolin didn't get more screen time. But if you look at the previous books, Sanderson was definitely building up to something with him, and I loved it. And then the whole Zeth and Kaladin interactions, so good. I'm assuming if you're watching this, you've at least read Rhythm of War. If not, go read Rhythm of War or whichever one you haven't read yet. So for me, most of the Stormlight Archive, I have been very annoyed by Shallan. I can't stand her most of the time. But in this book, I actually liked all of the Shallan POV moments. I still am not the biggest fan of her overall story arc because it's tied into like greater Cosmere stuff and it just irritates me. It's like with the MCU and they put in the little wink and the little nod. It's like, oh, you see that guy? You see that guy? He'll matter in like another movie. And the only reason he's in here is to slow the pacing down just a little unnecessarily so you can see we're going to be doing something later. So that bothered me. But in spite of that, I really enjoyed the Shallan chapters, which I didn't expect at all. I think Sanderson did a really good job of grouping up characters to keep the pace moving because I don't think he wanted like a Wheel of Time books like 8 and 9 where everyone is scattered and barely anything moves. So it was really nice that everyone's all clumped together. There were some really, really interesting Cosmere implications in this book. And, I can't talk about them. I absolutely love the book. This is a super short review. If I wanted to make a really long review, it would just be a spoiler review where I just gushed over the book for an hour talking about all my favorite moments. Let me know if any of you want that. Maybe I can make it happen. Like I said, after this, I read The Sunlit Man, and I had no intention of reading it, but I did know who the main character was. So when I finished Wind and Truth, I felt obligated to move on because this book takes place after Wind and Truth. Yeah, it was published before it, but I think it reads really good after Wind and Truth. You shouldn't be reading this before you finish the first 5 Stormlight books because I think it really improves the novel. The Sunlit Man is amazing. I want to say that it is my favorite standalone Cosmere novel, but I don't know if I can because Elantris doesn't have a sequel yet, so that's technically my favorite standalone, unless we count The Emperor's Soul. But either way, The Sunlit Man might be my favorite. The Sunlit Man is Mad Max plus science fiction western in the Cosmere. What more do I need to say? I could end the video now. It's so good. Super fast paced. Wonderful characters. If I have to put a knock against it, like the bad guy is kind of meh. He's like the whatever Hornet dude from the first Ant-Man movie, which was just like, bro, you're literally just here to get in the main character's way, which is fine because it's not about the bad guy in this. It's about Nomad and his growth and his change and him rediscovering what really matters to him and why he tries to save people and tries to do better. You have this broken man who I will not name, even though he is a POV character in Wind and Truth. He's just been on the run for decades, and he's miserable, and he's constantly watching people die, barely getting away. He has suffered a lot. This book is just the ultimate man with no name shows up and saves the town. It is like a perfect telling of that story. And I say it's perfect because if you read a lot of the Westerns and stuff that are the man with no name that comes into town, they're not very good. So this is just so much better than those and so much more fun that I think it makes it perfect. There are some very interesting implications for the Cosmere overall in the Sunlit Man. I think that the Sunlit Man is a preview of what Brandon Sanderson's going to be doing in like Mistborn Era 3 to 4, what he's going to be doing with hopefully the next Elantris book. He shows a lot of investiture blended with technology in this in really interesting ways. And he also shows that this might be a science fiction-ish story, but it's got a lot of fantastical elements, and it does a really good job of showing some of the traditional things from the Cosmere aren't anachronisms as technology has moved on. They still fit in, and they're still very powerful. So don't worry about the future of the Cosmere and spaceships and laser guns and all that, because you know what? Burning a little pewter or whipping out a shard blade is still going to be absolutely devastating, even if you're in a spaceship. Shard blades in a spaceship are terrifying. I don't even want to think about that. It's a nuclear option, man. You're just like, oh, y'all gonna kill me? I'm gonna cut a hole in this ship and we all gonna die. I can't go much further into it. Read The Sunlit Man if you've read Stormlight. You will adore it. It has a lot of the major themes that are in Wind and Truth, just on like a more personal level. I couldn't believe how much I enjoyed it. I really thought that I was going to poo-poo these, and I will say one thing. So I've had a theory since Rhythm of War and The Lost Metal came out, and I think that there was like a little editing issues at that time with Sanderson. I know he switched to a new editor. I think that there might have just not been like the trust or the vibing that you're supposed to have with your editor. It's gotten better. Wind and Truth completely redeemed my mixed to poor feelings toward Rhythm of War, but Sunlit Man was edited by his old editor, and I could tell almost instantly that it was not the same one. Now, I didn't know that it was his old editor until the end of the book, but through the whole book, I kept thinking, this feels like older Cosmere books. This feels like Mistborn Era 1, the beginning of Mistborn Era 2. It felt like all the cool moments from Warbreaker, the Sanderlanche from Elantris, just really cool action. I mean, I'm making a review for 2 books very late in a very large series. So if you're here, you're probably just listening to me gush over them because they're wonderful. You know, I don't really have much else to say. I'd love to do a Cosmere spoiler video. I'd have to do it with someone. I can't stand here and just talk about all of my theories nonstop. It would probably get very grating on both me and anyone who takes the time to watch it. I really love these books. I don't think either of them are like book of the year material because I've read too many bangers this year, but I think that they both might be in my top 10 for the year. Let me know in the comments if you've read either of these and what you think of them. Oh, real quick, the Sunlit Man's narration was okay. I liked the narrator about half the time. I really like his voice he has for Nomad's companion, but I didn't like his voice for like the bad guy. I say that, except the bad guy kind of reminded me of the Man in Black from The Stand, just like his tone and the way he spoke. So that was kind of cool, actually, and it kind of makes sense in like this Mad Max-ish world. But anyways, I'm done for now. I want to thank you for watching, and with that, I'll see you next time.